Hello everyone, it is Scott from Heroic Studios Gaming coming at you once again with another video. This time I am going to be talking to you about the RPG Rivers of London from Chaosium. Rivers of London, I'm going to leave this up so that I can get the cool screen grab. Rivers of London is a RPG about the Rivers of London book series by Ben Aronovich. Magic has returned to the world. The British Metropolitan Police Services have to deal with them, and so the Special Magical Branch takes on cases, finds criminals, and comes to grips with the Demimonde, or the area where the supernatural creatures that live in London. And as you may know from my previous video where I talked about the Rivers of London book series, these are both supernatural things and also spirits, or genius locorum, that the genie loci, spirits of certain particular places. But I should have clarified in that video, because I kind of didn't, that these spirits aren't like spirits. They're people. They are people who have got the spirit embodied in them. So they're born as kids, and then they just have this supernatural spirit all up inside them. Or they're normal people who get the spirit into them. So spirit exists regardless of whether it has like a vessel. But when it takes on a vessel, then the vessel becomes a person who is both kind of normal and then also kind of immortal. So that's what it is. So that's something to know. So let's talk about the Rivers of London RPG. It's a Chaosium product based on the Rivers of London series by Ben Aronovich, and it uses the basic universal role-playing system, or basic role-playing system. It was originally called the basic role-playing system, but now it's called the basic role-playing universal game engine. So I'm just throwing that out there, which means a few things. That means that this game is going to be a D100 game, even though the basic universal game engine, or basic role-playing universal game engine, isn't exactly D100, but it sort of is. But all the games that are based off it are D100, so basically we know it's going to be a D100 game, and it's true. We know that this game is not going to have levels, because none of those games have levels. That just doesn't exist in the basic role-playing universal game engine. I'm going to keep saying that until I get it right. Combat is going to be swift and deadly, and it's intended to be a mostly narrative game with modular difficulty that can be added to make it a little bit more crunchy. So that's our starting premise when we go into this, knowing that it's going to be like that because we know it's base. Some information about the Rivers of London book series that I forgot in the Rivers of London and sort of the video that I made, that I felt really stupid about because I didn't quite have enough research done, even though I usually do lots of research, but I'm in the middle of moving. As you might notice, pictures behind me that are usually hanging up are not there. So I didn't do as much research. But the Rivers of London series has 9 novels, 3 novellas, and 10 graphic novels. So it's a piece of information that I didn't have for you last time. If you want to know more about the Rivers of London series, go watch that video, and then you'll know more about what's going on. But themes of this game are investigating weird occurrences in London. There's also an American supplement promised. Who knows when we'll get it, but so investigate weird occurrences in American cities, presumably. Magic and using magic are going to be a theme in this game, and dealing with criminal elements that conflict with, blend, or work with supernatural creatures called the Demimonde that exist in London are themes of this. Because every one of your characters, every character you're going to play, while they may be a civilian, they are likely still connected to the police. So there are cops, supernatural cops, essentially. And then there are civilians, which are not supernatural cops. They could be civilian contractors. They could be random people. They could be other Demimonde. But you're essentially going to be investigating crimes or weird occurrences that are close enough to crimes that the police need to investigate. So disturbances, for example. So that's a theme. One key note is that this is not a monster hunting game. So unlike games where I might say that same theme that are monster hunting games, the Rivers of London is not a monster hunting game. The Rivers of London and other supernatural creatures of the Demimonde exist as just regular citizens in London, or in some cases, the rivers themselves are respected citizens. They live out in the open, but only those people that, and they do their normal stuff, but only those people that have knowledge that they're supernatural or know of their true nature have any idea that they are in fact supernatural creatures. For example, one of the sort of running characters in the story is Lady Cecilia Tyburn Thames. She's the daughter of the River Thames, and she's the spirit of Tyburn, which is an estuary of the Thames, so that makes sense, right? She's a politically connected person who runs 5 nonprofit organizations and is also a well-known contributor to the Metropolitan Police. In fact, one of her agents is like an associative chief something or other. And then her sister Fleet, who's another estuary of the Thames and also a daughter of the River Thames person, is a rich fashionista who travels around the art and fashion world and is well known to be a good foster mother to the wayward kids that she picks up and fosters. So these are people, and they're trying to live their life. And as we also learn from the first book in the series, rough sleepers, which is the Metropolitan Police term for homeless people, are some of them, not all of them, but some of them are trolls. And we also learn in another book that there are dwarves that were contracted by the city back in the day to help build the underground, the London Underground, the subway system, and they currently still live in and around it. So they help maintain it now as a negotiation is made by Peter Grant and the people that are involved. To sort of help them, to have them help with the tube stations. So these are supernatural creatures who are just doing their normal lives, and to everyone who has no idea that they're supernatural might just see them and think that they're just funny people doing funny things or just living their life and not realize that at all that they're supernatural. So this is a more of investigate the weird, investigate the crime, stop the crime, and make sure it doesn't injure the Queen's peace, as it keeps getting referenced a lot. But the dice system in Rivers of London is a D100 system. It's supposed to be fairly narrative, and they actually did a pretty good job of taking out a lot of the crunch that you find in Call of Cthulhu. It's weird to say that Call of Cthulhu has crunch because it's a fairly narrative game, but this takes away even more of that crunch, which makes it a little bit more free-flowing and fun. But based on D100 system, we know you're going to roll a D100, and you're going to try to get a number or below, a stat number or a skill number percentage or below in order to succeed on the roll, meaning that there's really only 5 outcomes. You're either going to roll a 000 and get a, or 100 as it's called, and get a fumble, which is a critical failure. You're going to roll above the stat or skill target percentage number and thereby get a failure, or a weak success, which comes up in opposed rolls, because if the other person got a fumble and you get a failure, you still actually succeeded. You beat them in the opposed roll, so it's called a weak success. A regular success is when you reach that percentage number or below, therefore you succeed. A hard success is when you reach half of that stat number or that percentage number and or below. And then if you get a 001, that is a critical success. There's 5 possible outcomes on a dice roll, which does affect how it goes. Now, when you do a dice roll, the game master might award you an additional die based on the circumstances. He might allow you to roll one, and it's going to be a tens die number, no matter what it is. He might allow you to roll one where you choose the lesser of the 2 tens numbers, in which case you have advantage because the bonus die means situations were favorable, or he might say you have to take the higher of the 2, meaning the situations were not favorable, and therefore you have disadvantage on the rolls. And when you oppose with somebody in this game, which happens a lot because combat is an opposed kind of thing, which we'll talk about later, you compare the degrees of success. Like I said before, the weak success thing versus the fumble, or a regular success versus a failure, or a hard success versus a regular success. So you compare those degrees of success, and whoever had the better one is the winner. And if it's a tie, it goes to the player. So the other thing players can do is players can spend luck points to manipulate the roll. If they want to push it, if they want to take the number, if they have enough luck points to reduce the number from wherever it was rolled on the die to what would be a success for them, they can do that. Or everyone can push the roll. But if you've played Call of Cthulhu, you know that pushing the roll means that if you push it and it fails again, it's treated as a fumble. So you might not want to do that because it's a critical failure if you fail on the re-roll from using a push. And if it's magic, then if you push it and you fail, then you suffer from a condition known as hyperthaumaturgical degradation, which the book talks about a lot, and it's essentially when your brain sort of shrivels up and dies and creates strokes or other brain damage based on the fact that you've pulled in way too much magic power into your body. So the game uses attributes and skills. The attributes, there are 5 of them, which simplifies some of the things. Call of Cthulhu has 9. It simplifies it because you have strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, and power. Then you have 2 derived stats, which are move and magic, because everyone has magic points in this game for some reason. And then you have luck, which is randomly generated and not a derived stat. It's something that you create. It simplifies the system with Call of Cthulhu because this game is not, unlike Call of Cthulhu, this game does not care about how good looking your person is or how educated they are. Those don't matter. Those are all just cosmetic things that go on top of your character's backstory or their style. So if you want to be an Oxford educated supermodel, you absolutely can. They don't care. System doesn't care. You're just going to go do stuff, and the fact that you're a supermodel may be some cool, fun side role-playing thing, but it isn't pertinent to your dice rolls. In this game, too, they also simplify the process of skills, because unlike Call of Cthulhu or RuneQuest, where you have 1,000,000 skills, this game has 54, which may sound like a lot, but actually most of those are expert skills that you'll only put on your character sheet if it's something your character has gained from an occupation, or you decide to spend some experience points, or development points as it's called in this game, on gaining them. So there's actually really only 11 skills. There's 9 what they call common skills that everybody can do, and 2 that are combat skills, which everyone can do. The expert ones are things like, if you're a medical examiner, you're going to have medicine or forensics or something, right? And if you're a cop, you're probably going to have something related to law or cop procedures, but they're not on the character sheet. There's just a section with a bunch of lines for you to write in those expert skills. So your character's only going to have this like 11 skill tree, which isn't even a tree. It's just a block of that, and you're going to have a number in all of them, some percentage that you can do, so everyone can do them. So skills are very simplified in this game, and then there's just a level of whether you're good at it or not, and I'll cover that in character creation, which is right now. When you make your character in Rivers of London, you're essentially going to start with you choosing your occupation. There are 25 or 28 options for you to choose. It's less like Call of Cthulhu where you choose your occupation first, because that's going to flavor how you build the rest of your character. Is your character a cop? Is your character a cabbie? Is your character a newspaper delivery person, right? Like, this is the question, and that'll affect how you build your character from there. But then you're given 280 points to allocate into your stats. However, the game tells you have to have at least 30 in each one, or maximum of 80 in any one. So you have to put at least 30 in. So it gives you this little, like, you can just go do it and just go allocate your points, which, by the way, the average would be 56. I mathed it out. You could do it, just put 56 in all of them and then move on. Or you can use this sort of pre-fast, what is in Call of Cthulhu called the, like, quick fire generation or whatever. You can do that. And it's the most popular way that people make characters in Call of Cthulhu, so the developers of this game said, just skip it, let's just go to that. So you could allocate them individually, or you can just use their 3 options, which is a similar way to make characters in the World of Darkness stuff these days, where there's essentially a balanced or averaged style of just allocate 30, 30, 30, 40, 40, 40, 50, 50, like that kind of thing. Or it's got a slightly stronger one where you have some higher numbers than you would in the balanced one, but you have more lower stats because you're swinging a little bit harder. And then there's the min-max version where you basically have like 80, 80, 30, 30, 30, right? It's like that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what you do. Then you're going to figure out, based on those stats, the derived move and the derived magic points that you have, and then you're going to make a 2d10 plus 50 roll to figure out how many luck points you have. That's how you do the stat. That's how you do stats. It's just, yeah, it starts like that. And then you're going to choose advantages in this game, because you'll do skills in a minute. But you're going to choose advantages after you've done your stats. Very fast process anyway. So choose advantages. They're like feats, essentially. You get to start with either 2 minor ones or 1 major one. That's how you start with your character, and then you can get more later. Minor ones might be like fast reactions or natural toughness, where you are a little bit tougher, so you don't take as much damage when damage occurs. Or in a fast reaction, you're faster, your initiative's higher, or whatever. Or 1 major one, like being a magical character. That's a major one. It's actually, because if you wanted to be a police officer, a magical police officer, you're going to have to take that one. So it's kind of like that. So it's a major one. There's a few other major ones, but they're mostly minor. There's not very many of these, but it is where you get to start making your character be cool, be your character. Then you're going to go to skills. Now, like I said before, there's only 11 skills that are going to be on your character sheet, and they're going to be something that all of your characters have access to. So all of the 11 skills start with 30. No matter what you choose to do, no matter what your occupation is, they're all going to have 30. So you start off relatively quickly, because you know all of the ones that are on the character sheet start with 30. Then you have expert skills, which start at 0, and they're not written on your character sheet because you have to put them in as necessary. So unless you find it through your occupation or some other choice method, it's not going to exist on your character sheet, and you won't write it in. But you have some prerequisite ones that you will need sort of to maintain your occupation. So what it is at this point in the game, you have to look back over those. There's a little bit jumping back. You have to look back over those and make sure that you put some points into those things. Like a forensic examiner would not have no points in forensics or medicine, right? That just wouldn't work. So you have to put points into those things. But you just still write them on the character sheet with 0, and you would just put them in. And then what you would do is you get to select 6. I'm sorry, with the ones you get from there, I think you get to put 30 into them if you choose them. But anyway, you get to choose 6 skills that are common or expert that you get to bump up to 60. That's how you go. You can go, it's still a 0. That's right. Expert is still 0, but if you decided you wanted to do that, you would then take your medical or forensics or whatever, and it would jump to 60. So that would mean your character is at least halfway decent in the thing they're supposed to be good at. And you just choose 6 things that you want to push up to 60. But if you look at the occupation, it gives you a recommendation on which ones you should probably push up to 60. Like a cop is going to have the ones that are kind of more cop-related at a higher level than the ones that are not cop-related, right? That's sort of the idea. But it doesn't mean that they will. Maybe they're just really bad at note-taking, but they're really good at driving, right? So this might be how you build it. And then as far as languages go in this game, like it doesn't really follow the Call of Cthulhu thing, but it kind of does. Your native language is something that you're going to have a ridiculous amount and it just assumes you can speak it. And then you may or may not be of a mixed race background because our main character, Peter Grant, is, in which case you also can speak the other language in your household. And then other skills are basically whatever you kind of choose at half of your int. Right? So whatever your int is, half that, that's what your stat number is for that language. You just, know it decently well. But yeah, so it takes like 20 minutes or so the first time you make your character because you're reading through everything. But I think that when you get the hang of it, because I made like 5 characters, after you get the hang of it, it's like 5 to 10 minutes. It's not very long at all. In fact, you can also take the free solo adventure they have in the middle of the book and do it, and it helps you make a character. So, I mean, it's not going to be a super unique character, but it will help you build a character in the case you're having fun. But the real thing you get to choose when you make a character is if you choose a magical character, you get to create their Signare. What is Signare? Well, I mentioned in the video where I talked about the Rivers of London books that there's this thing called Vestigia. And in the game, it's really important to know that Vestigia is a thing because your character will sort of draw upon it in the Vestigia that is left behind when magical things happen and try to investigate it. The Vestigia are going to have... it's going to come in the form of smells, sounds, tactile feelings, whatever the case is, they're sense memories. And they don't exist anywhere except inside of your mind after you're near the location of where a thing happens. But everyone that's in the same location, so 2 different characters are standing on a spot where something magical happened, they're both going to have the same vestigia, despite the fact, or the sense memories, despite the fact that it's in their own minds. The key is to trying to train out your ability to recognize when these vestigia are just random thoughts in your head and when they are actually external forces. They sort of feel like echoes of dreams, according to the books. And if you don't have the training, you won't notice them. They just kind of disappear. You slip through it. Like, for example, if you were like running to a bus stop and you suddenly felt the feeling that like you felt like spiderweb hit your face and you smelled shoe leather, would you stop and like investigate why you felt spiderweb on your face or why it smelled like shoe leather even though you were on the sidewalk running toward a bus? No, you wouldn't. You're too busy doing your stuff. However, somebody who's trained in recognizing vestigia would stop and go, wait a minute, that might not have been something touching my face. That might have been just in my head. And then they'll kind of work their way around to investigate. That's how it works. So vestigia is what that's called. And the sense vestigia is one of the skills that you will have. Signare are essentially the vestigia, but they're the sense memory left by the caster. So vestigia is what I would notice when you cast the spell, and Signare would be the vestigia you're leaving when you cast your spell. So the difference would be who the sort of perspective, essentially. So Signare is... Vestigia exists when supernatural things happen, regardless of whether they're spells or not. Signare only exists with spells, but it's your style. So, like, for example, it's your Patronum, if you think of Harry Potter. That's what it is. It's that vestigia you leave behind when you're doing your magic. Maybe it's the smell of fresh cut grass. Maybe it's the sound of water filling a cup. Maybe it's the feel of the sun on your face on a warm day. Whatever it is, when you do your thing, it leaves you behind this sense memory, which is called the Signare. So that's the like fun part about creating your character, and also the fact that like using this information, you know that magical investigations are going to be linking Vestigia to Signare and figuring out who did it. That's it. That's the whole thing. Is saying like, this person, they're the ones that has fresh cut grass smell. Character progression in the Rivers of London RPG is different from Call of Cthulhu. It takes a more traditional approach. You essentially get one development point for each game session you're part of, which you can use to increase skills, gain new magical spells, master magical spells that you know, buy advantages, that kind of thing. That's what it's for. It's a very traditional system of one per game, maybe an extra one for a story arc, or maybe a special one for a very cool role-playing moment, whatever the case is. That's how it works. It's a very simple system. You just you gather them up and you spend them, like XP kind of spending with the way you spend XP in, like, say, World of Darkness or something. That's really the whole game. The combat system is an opposed system, like I said before, much like Call of Cthulhu, and the game really only has 2 time brackets: rounds, where it's in combat, and everything else. So it doesn't really talk about any other. It sort of mentions that there's like another one, but it's really not there. Like, it really doesn't exist. It's really essentially rounds or not rounds. So in the combat rules, you're going to be attacked, or you're going to attack somebody, and when that happens, you're going to choose to defend. If you're not attacking, right? If you're the defender, you can either do nothing, you can dodge, you can fight back, or you can flee. Dodging is doing nothing means you just get hit, right? That's simplistic. But if you do nothing, well, the reason why that's there, it's because it's an option, and the reason it's there is so that when you get surprised, it's already worked in. So you have to choose the do nothing option if somebody surprised you. It's that simple. So they worked it in as like an option. They put it there. They talk about it, and it's like, well, that's stupid. Why would I take it? The answer is sometimes you have no choice, and you must take it. So that's why it's there. You do nothing, you get hit, and that's what happens. For dodging, you try to make an opposed roll to see if you can get out of the way of the attack, if you're quicker or whatever. Whether it's ranged or magical, you sacrifice your next action to kind of dive out of the way. If it's melee, then you try to move out of the way. You don't have to sacrifice an action to get out of the way. Fight back is where you try to where the Chaosium combat rules and I love each other, because fight back is the option where you try to Jeet Kune Do style punch a guy before they punch you or something. You respond to the attack by trying to do a maneuver or your own attack or whatever. And I love using the knockout maneuver whenever that comes up. So whenever I'm in combat in Call of Cthulhu, I use the knockout maneuver, which exists in this game as well. And essentially, you're going to hit somebody. If you succeed, if you beat them on the roll, if you got a higher degree of success than they did, you hit them, they take 1 point of damage, and they go unconscious. That exists in this game, but since the game is mostly about cops, what it's thinking you're going to do is actually do a takedown and not a knockout. Like, you're not going to punch him in the face and, like, he goes unconscious. You're going to try to tackle the person assailing you and handcuff them. So that is the difference between the knockouts in Call of Cthulhu and the knockouts here in Rivers of London, because it's more of a takedown. And then, I guess one interesting thing to note is that initiative is slightly different in this game than Call of Cthulhu. You don't have initiative like Dex plus, 50 if you have a weapon or something. It's really just a matter of who initiated the fight, and then it moves around the table to the left. If the NPCs initiated the fight, then it starts with the game master and it moves to the left. If the players initiated the fight, it starts with the player that initiated the fight, moves to the left, which is an interesting way to do combat initiative in this game. It's sort of not based on how fast your character is. It's really a matter of whether or not your character did something first, which makes it a narratively oriented system for initiative, which I think is great. Damage also should be mentioned. Damage is a unique thing in this game because it doesn't follow Call of Cthulhu's or any of the other systems like typical damage system. In fact, you may have noticed that I didn't list health points as one of your derived stats because you don't have them. There's essentially 5 damage slots that your character has: hurt, bloodied, down, mortally wounded, or impaired. And impaired can occur whether it's physical or mental damage. It's just a thing that exists. In fact, you would never get to it. You go mortal wound and then dead. But you may be in the state of impaired if you survive a mortal wound and then you have to live with it, sort of thing. But essentially, your character can take 4 damage that you need to take 5 to die. But even when you get 5, you can survive by spending 30 luck. So there is an option to stay alive, but you would still be mortally wounded. Armor drops, plays a factor in it in that it takes the damage, so it drops the damage you would take. So a stab vest, for example, a Metropolitan stab vest would take damage from a knife, which is 1, which would hurt you, and knocks it down to 0. So it deflects it, right? And the way that it works is if you take damage from something, whether you get hurt, then you're at that stage, and then if you get more hurt, then it goes up to bloodied, etc. Some damage is some weapons do more than 1 damage. So it'll just tell you that like a knife will do 1 damage, but a gun will do 3 damage, right? That kind of thing. And so you'll know that those are the damage blocks. So you could become mortally wounded, especially if somebody gets a critical success where it doubles it. But at the end of a combat, healing is a very fast thing. At the end of a combat, as long as you're not mortally wounded, you're fine. Hurt and bloodied immediately go away. The character is grizzled, but they're fine. They just fades off. If you're hurt, you can downgrade the damage by spending 10 luck points the next day, and then it downgrades to bloodied, and then it just vanishes, right? So you're fine again. Mortally wound is really the only way that you die in this game, like going above mortally wound. Mortally wounded damage requires a first aid or medicine or hospitalization or some other kind of thing. To survive. And then what you do is, if you're trying to survive that, you have to spend 1 development point and 20 luck points to downgrade it to bloodied for 3 days. But that's kind of up to the GM. And then it would do the next, after those 3 days, it would drop down to hurt and then eventually fade away. They really don't mean anything. You just take those damage. So it's something like if the character falls or bonk your head, it essentially will say, well, if they bonk their head, that's just hurt. It goes away in moments. But if they fall from a cliff, that's 4 damage, right? Or something. If they throw a fireball, 4 damage. Like that kind of thing. So, yeah. So we're getting to the long point of this video, but that's the Rivers of London. The other part of it is magic, which is highly important. The magic in this game is Newtonian magic developed by, they're by Sir Isaac Newton. But it's essentially the primary characters are magic cops, and they use Newtonian magic, and everyone else is part of this folly, they're contractors with them, and they're all trying to help maintain the Queen's peace. That's the whole point of the story, is you're investigating that. But essentially anyone with the magic skill can learn magical spells, and spells once learned can be cast by the people, and then if they're mastered, they don't. I think there's a thing where they get advantage or something. I don't remember exactly, but essentially the way you're going to cast a spell is you're going to make a skill roll, and if you succeed, you cast the spell. The spell will cost a number of magic points to cast depending on its level. So a level 1 spell will cost 1 magic point. So on and thus forth. 2 costs 2, etc. And you just make the skill roll to see if you can cast it. If you fail, then you lose some points. You lose some magic points, and you have to make a power roll to see if you suffer from any hypothermical degradation. Well, actually, I'm sorry, that only comes up if you push. So if you fail, you just fail. But if you push the roll to try to succeed and then you fail, then you have to make the roll to see if you take any hyperthaumaturgical degradation. And then how much it is. But it takes 1 round to cast a spell, so the same as shooting a gun or anything like that. It's really just the thing that you do. So the higher spells are considered more complex. So a level 1 spell like Wear Light or Impello costs like 1 point to cast them, and they're level 1 spell. It's not complicated, but the higher order ones take a little bit more prefix suffix according to the book, but the game doesn't really have you do that because it still casts instantaneously. But you would spend more magic points to cast them. That's really how it does it. So you're just spending more to do it. So that's it. That's the Rivers of London game. I give it 2 thumbs. I have 2 thumbs. It's a wonderful game. As a fan of the books, I think they did a great job of taking the books and turning it into the RPG. I will say that I am sad that they didn't include the Call of Cthulhu Sanity component, but that's because the books are more whimsical and fun, and I think they were just trying to avoid making it look like Call of Cthulhu because it's really not the same thing. It's whimsical and fun. And so, yeah. So that's about it. Go out there, have fun, play campaigns or one-shots. It can really do both. So go out and investigate the supernatural. Carry on and keep the Queen's peace, I guess.